Hello everyone, this is RetroFuture and I have another Battleborn character review episode for you, and in this video we're going to be looking at Eldragon. We're going to be looking at the Luchador from LLC. We're going to be going over his skill setup, his Helix loadout, his lore and backstory, and I'm going to go over some tips and tricks that I have found to use him effectively in combat, and we can tear it up with this very entertaining and charismatic Battleborn. So let's go right into the skill loadout that he's got. First up, his first skill is called Clothesline. Eldragon will charge forward with his arms stretched out, dealing 67 damage, and he charges forward at a very, very fast pace. It's very fast. Sometimes, the first time you use it, it might catch you off guard and you'll probably run into a wall. But with a little bit of patience and practice, you'll get used to it. Now, when he's en fuego, he'll do a powerful leap forward, dealing massive damage to one enemy. We'll get into that in a second. Next up, his second skill is called Dragon Splash. Eldragon will leap into the air, and then he'll fall back down, and then deal 200 damage to all nearby enemies. So he pretty much just jumps in the air and does a big belly flop onto the ground. And the other thing about it is, while en fuego, the Dragon Splash will stun all enemies that are damaged by it. Now, his ultimate is called en fuego. Now, this is what happens. Eldragon will he'll explode in energy, like a bunch of energy will start pulsing through his body, and his fists will be like on white fire, and all of his attacks will just be insanely powerful, and for the next 10 seconds, all his attacks and skills take on additional properties. So his clothesline will deal powerful damage to one opponent after he leaps forward at tremendous speeds. His Dragon Splash, while en fuego, will stun all enemies that are damaged by the initial attack. So en fuego is pretty much an ultimate ability. It's pretty much him going super form, and it further augments his abilities for 10 seconds. Very useful. You'll see me use en fuego in this video a lot. Next up, his basic R2 is standard punch spinning combo, similar to what Wrath does. It's very similar to what Wrath does in terms of the basic combo. It's one attack with one arm, one attack with the other arm, and then a spinning attack using both arms. Very useful, pretty standard and straightforward. His L2 ability is a clap. Eldragon will clap both hands together, and he'll deal damage out in front of him. Fairly useful, fairly okay. It's okay for damage, but we're going to augment that in the Helix loadout later to make it much, much better. His circle ability is a running drop kick. You have to be running, though. You have to be sprinting at full speed and he'll execute a drop kick. Well, we're going to augment that once again in the Helix loadout. Now, his passive ability is called Undisputed Champ. What it means is that when Eldragon gets a kill, his Eldragon's melee damage is increased by 3%, and you can have a maximum of 10 stacks of these, which means that once Eldragon gets 10 kills and he does not die, he could have an increase of 30% melee damage. That is insane. That is very useful. Now, when Eldragon dies, you don't lose everything, you only lose half. Now, if you have an odd number, let's say 7 stacks right now, and you die, I don't know if you go down to 3 or 4. I personally don't have that information. I apologize. But Undisputed Champ is absolutely amazing. And it just helps Eldragon kill his opponents even quicker. And that's it for the basic skill loadout. Now we're going to go into his lore and backstory. Now all Battleborn characters have 5 lore pieces that they have to unlock. However, the fired up lore piece that you get by killing 50 players while Eldragon has his en fuego ability currently active, pretty much this one lore piece tells his entire story. The others are pretty much all bits and pieces of it. This one really sums it up really well. It tells the story of Eldragon, or by his real name, Francesco Drake. He was born in the LLC Arc Fleet to a well-muscled family of Applian immigrants. So he's from Applia, the same planet as Montana, which does make sense. His physique kind of resembles Montana. A big upper body and bulky arms with relatively normal size shaped lower body and a head. So he's kind of shaped a little bit Montana, just slightly shorter and not as muscular. But he's got the same relative physique. And he also had kind of like a temper. He would also have like this tendency to fight robots. Like, that was his tendency. Like, he just could not control himself, and he loved breaking them and fighting them, and he liked wrestling with them. And he had a job with a manufacturer in his early 20s, but he was fired for practicing wrestling moves on the very robots that he was paid to assemble. So after he got fired from that, it really helped him put his career forward, and he pursued his dream of becoming a luchador, and he entered this wrestling league and the LLC Hollow matches, and that's where he became El Dragon, the luchador. However, he was a reigning champion for a very long time, but he lost. He lost his title and his arms to one very well-known opponent, Isaac. Isaac actually was his opponent in a match, and he ripped his arms off live on television, live across all, intergalactic broadcast or whatever, and Isaac ripped his arms clean off, and in the middle of a match, televised and all that. And El Dragon was rushed to a hospital, where Cleese created the cybernetic arms and gauntlets that he currently wears, and he had them attached, and had his nervous system connected to it and stuff like that. He did the whole thing, pretty much enabling El Dragon to have arms again. And now El Dragon carries a big chip on his shoulder, and he wants nothing more to get revenge on Isaac for what Isaac did to him. Go figure. Excuse me. It's no surprise he'd be pissed off at Isaac for tearing his arms off, but that's just the type of person Isaac is. So El Dragon, if you play him in the algorithm story mission, he'll constantly talk to Isaac and tell him, look, I'm here for revenge, you ripped off my arms. And Isaac's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, because Isaac really doesn't care who he hurts. He doesn't take any consideration or care at all. He doesn't really give a fuck. He hurts and kills indiscriminately. So El Dragon, having his arms ripped off, was really just another day, a day as usual for someone like Isaac. And that also pissed El Dragon off. The fact that Isaac really doesn't remember or care to remember what Isaac did to him. So it pisses him off something quite fierce. The only other thing about his lore that I'd like to go over is the price. Well, as you all know, medical bills can be rather high. They're high here for us, and in our day and age. But with the emergency resuscitation, emergency transport, facility, surgery, prosthetic, the two cool-ass robot arms, as Cleese called it, the facility discharge, the pharmacy, the room, miscellaneous charges and fees. The total bill came out to $847,482,901 credits. They were automatically deducted from his current account. Obviously he had his own bank account or whatever, and his current balance that he was left with afterwards was negative 2,948,011 credits. And so he eventually got hired by the Hemsworth family by Cleese's recommendation. So he now works as a guard for the Hemsworth family, for Phoebe's family. So it's very nice to see that, and afterwards, after working as a guard for the Hemsworth family, he's now a member of the Battleborn with all of us here, and he's fighting to save the universe, but also seeking to get revenge on Isaac, which he does in the algorithm. When you play his story and you beat the mission, El Dragon is thoroughly ecstatic that they defeated Isaac, and he feels like he's finally redeemed himself and become the #1 champ like he always wanted to be. And anyway, that's it for El Dragon's Helix lore and backgrounds. Not Helix lore, his lore and background story. Next, we're going to move on to his Helix. We're going to move on to his Helix loadout, and I'm going to show you the setup that I have to utilize him very effectively and make him extremely dangerous in combat. Alright, so first up, level 1, right off the bat, I go with the comeback. Enemies hit by Dragon Splash deal reduced damage for a short time. That enables us to hit our opponents with Dragon Splash, and it means that for the next 8 seconds, they don't deal as much damage, which enables El Dragon to survive just a little bit longer. And El Dragon is very capable of dealing out a good amount of damage in a short amount of time, so that minus 30% damage that we receive, it can be a difference maker between, getting the kill or being the one who gets killed. So for level 1, I go with the comeback. Level 2, I prefer to use splash damage. Dragon Splash leaves behind an electrical field that deals damage over 6 seconds. It'll deal 480 damage, which is pretty good. It just enables Dragon Splash to be even better. So now not only does it reduce the damage that enemies deal to us for 8 seconds, but it will also continuously leave a field behind that will damage them continuously for the next 6 seconds. So very good, very useful. Next up, level 3, I go with Deafening Applause. Eldragon's clap attack, his L2 is pretty much, now it delivers a shockwave blast, and it enables Eldragon to deal splash damage, to multiple enemies at once. It's fairly good, especially when you're chasing after a retreating enemy and they're just outside your basic R2 melee range, or for, say, an opponent that's going invisible. Like Shannon Aurochs or Oscar Mike, sometimes they're around you, but you can't really pinpoint where they are so that your R2s can connect. So you're sometimes just holding down L2 and just having Eldragon clap repeatedly and deal, splash damage, through his clapping, shock. It's pretty good, I have to say. I like it. First I didn't like it. I tried Power Fist, but after using Deafening Applause, I can definitely see why a lot of people like to run it. Next up, level 4, I go with Flailing Fists. When you deactivate Clothesline, when we're sprinting, all you have to do is deactivate it, so I just tap L1 again, and Eldragon will, come to a halt, and he'll slam the ground with both his fists, and all enemies that are nearby get knocked into the air. Kind of like how Wrath does his Cataclysmic Smash. It does roughly the same kind of thing, only it doesn't have as good a range, but it's still pretty good. It's great for chasing enemies who are a good distance off. They're retreating, they're trying to get away. This is excellent for chasing after them. As long as they're in a straight line and they're clear of enemies and you're not running into a death trap, this is actually very good at chasing after them. Knock them into the air, and then you can position yourself so that you can, try and cut them off and finish them off before they get a chance to try and run away yet again. Next up, level 5, I go with Heavyweight. Heavyweight, Uncanny, and Welterweight. I tried all 3 of these. Heavyweight was very useful just because if we're taking less damage, it enables Eldragon to live longer. That's how I see it. I don't use Uncanny all that much, considering it's not his skilled damage that I care about. It's his melee damage. It's his ability to just hold down R2 and just beat the crap out of his opponents. That's what I prefer. And Heavyweight enables me to do it just a little bit longer, especially after we've been getting kills and kills and kills and kills. So it's pretty damn good there, now that we not only have increased offense, but now increased defense for every kill that Undisputed Champion will stack. Next up, level 6, I go with Unstoppable. This is absolutely amazing. This enables Eldragon to just beat the tar out of his opponents once again after Dragon Splash. Dragon Splash is an amazing ability, and we're just augmenting that to be even better. If you don't have Unstoppable, I would go with Hang Time, just because, it's, once again, we're augmenting Dragon Splash, and you know what? Eldragon using Dragon Splash, to regen his shields will also slightly improve his chances of living. But I prefer Unstoppable, just allows us to just beat the tar out of our opponents in, really quick, really speedy fashion, and it enables us to either then use Clothesline to get away or move on to the next objective. So now for level 7, either one of these is completely up to you. You can go with From the Top Rope or Big Splash. Both of them augment Dragon Splash. Both of them are actually very good. One will reduce the cooldown time, the other one increases the area of effect radius. Big Splash I like to go with because ultimately now that we're level 7, we've unlocked En Fuego, so this just enables me to stun more people or have a little bit, or it's a little more forgiving now, and I don't have to land precisely on them or right next to them. This enables me to stun people who look like they're a little too far away and they might feel like they're safe, but in reality when I hit them with Dragon Splash after this Big Splash augmentation, they're going to get stunned and they're going to realize how deep in the hole they really are now. Next up, level 8. This is absolutely hilarious. I like to go with Unbelievable. If anything, I never use Eldragon's Dropkick. I never use his Circle Melee. Never. I never use it at all. I've tried using it. It's goofy looking, but his Unbelievable, the Dropkick is replaced by Bicycle Kick and it propels him forward he just does repeated bicycle kicks to the face, as if he were Kung Lao from Mortal Kombat. He just, like in the Mortal Kombat movie where Kung Lao finished off Reptile by doing repeated bicycle kicks in mid-air, flying in mid-air. That's literally what Eldragon does. He kicks repeatedly for like 4 seconds straight, it feels like. It's hilarious to look at. I would do that just to make yourself laugh. I have used it on opponents. It can kick them and knock them back repeatedly, but they'll quickly bounce to one side or the other, and then Eldragon will just keep going, and then it leaves you open, but it's still hilarious. I love it. Next up for level 9, this one is up to you. I don't like to use Clothesline except for a retreat option, so either one of these really doesn't worry me too much, but Cut the Line would make it so that if we hit anything on the way, the cooldown time is reduced a little bit. So you know what? Hey, go for it. This enables us to use Clothesline a little bit sooner, so if we need to beat another hasty retreat, then you know what? We can do it all the more sooner, which is all the more better. Next up, level 10. You can go, I like Unquenchable, just because, you know what, it's kind of cool. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Unquenchable, don't get me wrong. But I prefer Title Fight. Activating En Fuego creates a ring of fire, dealing 133 damage to enemies as they enter or exit. I like to run that just because it creates an area where where my opponents can't go without taking damage. Dragonfire, I've tried. It does not. I don't get it. I don't really understand how throwing a fireball, it doesn't travel all that fast in my opinion. It's just not all that good. If I'm activating En Fuego, I'm not going to be activating Clothesline. And I'm not going to be using my L2 ability all that much. I'm going to be using Dragon Splash and then holding down R2 and pounding the ever-loving shit out of my opponents until they die or until I die. So either one of these is up to you. I really don't care for any of them, but Title Fight is, in my opinion, is the best, I guess. I don't use it all that much because, quite frankly, I activate En Fuego outside of the battle, and then I quickly rush in and hit them with Dragon Splash, ambushing my opponents and then finishing them off before they have a chance to realize that Eldragon is En Fuego. So I like to ambush my opponents by using En Fuego around a corner, not by doing it in the middle of a heated combat zone. That's usually how I prefer, but either one is perfectly up to you. And that's going to be my Helix loadout for Eldragon. It's a fairly successful loadout. I've had a lot of success with it overall, and now we're going to head back to the gameplay. Real quick note I'd like to point out is, like, my equipment loadout for Eldragon is pretty standard and straightforward. I like to go with stuff that focuses on a well balance of attack damage and attack speed and also health. Eldragon has is a little low on health in my opinion, so I just gave him a chest armor that also has increased damage when he kills a major opponent. Increased attack damage for the next 60 seconds. It's the same chest armor I gave Montana. So I'm using that for Eldragon in addition to, 2 items, one for attack damage and the other one for attack speed, just because it's his melee damage that makes Eldragon good. And that's what I prefer. That's how I like to play Eldragon. I like to get in close to my opponents and beat the tar out of them and just hold down R2 and just relentlessly assault them. And one of the things I love is just to do this, is to do En Fuego and then immediately use the Dragon Splash right after that. I love ambushing opponents with En Fuego. It catches them off guard, and when they're there completely helpless, there's only a few characters that I actually have trouble with, even if I hit them with En Fuego Dragon Splash. And that is Wrath, because he can automatically go into Cataclysmic Smash as soon as he recovers, and he might be able to completely cancel that ability if he has the silence augmentation on his Cataclysmic Smash. Or Montana, for instance, because he has just such huge health. But most other characters, if you hit them with En Fuego and Dragon Splash, it is outstandingly effective against a majority of characters, even Galilea, Umbra, Phoebe. It does not matter. A lot of these characters are, no match for Eldragon once he gets on a roll. And it's very important that you don't die. Eldragon, I would describe him as kind of a paper tiger. He can deal out a lot of damage, but he's not all that great at taking damage. He dies really quickly, in my opinion, so I have to play, very cautiously. I have to pick my spots, early on in the game, I rush in, attack, And as soon as things start to turn south, before it gets too late, before things even start to look really bad, I don't hesitate to use clothesline to run away. I use clothesline as a defensive measure, not offensively. It's great for gaining distance and putting a lot of space between you and whatever's threatening you. Eldragon does a lot of damage. He's a paper tiger, in my opinion. He does a lot of damage, but he can't take a lot of damage. You have to play very cautiously, but once you level up Eldragon, then you can afford to play very aggressively. Then you can afford to go balls deep on your opponents and just wail into them. You know, sometimes you'll die like I did right there, but I mean, these numbers don't lie. I mean, come on. Now, granted, my opponents weren't all that great, but even still, Eldragon is a great melee character. I love playing him. He's entertaining to listen to, and I really like playing as him. And that's really all I've got for it in this video. That's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, comment down below. I'll see you guys all later in my next video. This is RadTechShoe signing off.